Hey guys, we are welcome. By the way, raise your hand if this is your first high six group call. Total group. Of course, Ryan Navi, yup. Is that it? Everybody else has been kicking around. All right, good deal.
Dan Furnish.
And Dan. Sorry, Dan. First call for you too.
Yeah.
Judy Hawkeye. I didn't see Dan. I still can't see him.
Yeah,
All right.
I'm just a fly on the wall.
All right. So we are lucky enough to have Peter already with us. So I'm not going to do positive focus or anything. Steve and I have some things we want to do when we're done. And when we're done, will be predicated upon you guys' questions because it's going to be all you guys. And I do want to, I don't know everybody's stuff going on right now, but I do want to say congrats to Kyle because I guess they had a great buyers meeting yesterday, him and Nick, and they're going to close that baby out. What's the payday one, Kyle?
Probably close to about 50.
50 grand?
Yeah.
Cool. Nice. And then how much up front?
Are the buyers putting up front?
Mm-hmm.
I want to say it was 27, and with installments over time, getting them up to 50,000 overall.
Sweet. Nice start, 27 grand.
Awesome.
Yep. Nice first buyer.
You sound really excited, Kyle.
Yeah. Hey, look who's talking over there. All right. Pete, are you back with us? I don't know if you stepped away. He's back.
Sweet. I was making some coffee, brother.
All right, that's good. Let me give a quick intro, because then it's going to be more us talking to you, as I know you love doing for us, and I really appreciate. Pete is just back from Australia, and he'll explain what he was doing there. Peter and I met on a podcast. I think it was pre-COVID. It must have been 19. Peter, I don't even remember. I think it was 18 or 19.
Yeah.
And funny story. I may have told this at the event, but Peter knows this already. So I get the interview sheet, and I call Zach, and I go, "Who's this guy who owns a gym? I don't like. Why am I having him on the podcast?" And Zach said, "You idiot!" And he went through all the stuff that Peter has accomplished. He built one of the largest fitness brands in the world. He's now launched another concept that I'm going to have him briefly tell you about, just because if it doesn't get your head to do this, I'll be shocked. Peter's now a stockholder in our company and has been since like 20. And so it's just super beneficial for lack of a word, for me to be able to literally call Pete anytime I want, and absolutely amazing with what he's been through. Pete, with that as a super humble intro, there's a whole bunch of people that don't know you, and there's some that have met you personally and talked with you personally. Could you maybe do, I have a question selfishly I'm going to ask you first before everybody else, but could you give them like, I don't know, 3 minutes, like 10,000 foot view of where you came from? Because then that'll help them with the questions. It's not like overnight you did what you did.
For sure. First of all, I love doing this, and I want to start by saying no questions you ask. Nothing's off the table on this call. And I love sharing where I came from, because I think it brings context that anything is possible. Look, I grew up in a small little town in Minnesota. I'm the youngest of 7 kids. I have an identical twin. And I grew up in a small little town. I went to school in a 2-room schoolhouse, and I grew up poor. I went to college and quit college my junior year. And, I always say, if I was a stock, you would have shorted me for sure. And I got my first break when I was about 22 years old, 21, 22, to turn around a failing health club in my hometown. And I always say, opportunity, it doesn't knock, it whispers. So you always have to be paying attention to where is the next opportunity come. And for me, I had nothing going on. I mean, I'll paint a picture for you. I'm 22. I'm rocking this mullet. I couldn't find my ass with both hands. I mean, honestly, it's I had no shot, but the one shot I got was to turn around this health club in my little hometown. And when you have nothing, everything was good. They paid me $16,000 a year, but they said, "Hey, Peter, if you can turn this club around, we'll let you buy us out with the profits." And when you have nothing, and when you have grit and the heart of a lion, I was never afraid of hard work because I'd been doing it my whole life. And that was my shot. The mistake they made was they never put a ceiling on how much equity I could acquire. Well, it took me about 8 years. 8 years, I took this club that was losing $200,000 a year to making about $250,000 a year. I bought everyone out, and that was my springboard. Okay, and that was my springboard over the next 10 years. So now I've been at this club for 18 years, and I got this idea what if I got away? What if I built a smaller club? And what if I built a smaller club? Keep in mind, I just had cash flow. I had one club, but I had cash flow. And I said, what if I built one club? Instead of having swimming pools and climbing walls and racquetball courts, I'm just going to condense this club to make it a smaller footprint. And I just kept pulling things out. So eventually I had this club that instead of it being 40,000 square feet, it was 4,000 square feet. I made it 24-hour access. You belong to one, you belong to them all. I only had one. Okay. But look, it sounds so you belong to one, you belong to them all. And I launched it. Now, if someone told me that I was going to go from there to building over 4,000 locations in 28 countries, I would have told them you're full of shit. But look, I'm living proof, the hometown boy in the little town of Wilmer, Minnesota, that anything is possible. So I grew that company to today I'm in 28 countries, 4,000 plus locations, multiple brands. I stepped down as a CEO about 4.5 years ago, just because I wanted to do something else. I've had a number of large exits in that brand. One of the first calls I got was from Forbes. I'm a Forbes Masterclass instructor. I'm an Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year. And the only reason I share that with you is it brings me great joy. When you start with nothing, it brings me great joy to help others find their way to financial freedom. Honestly, I met Chris and Zach through a podcast, and I loved what they were about. Honestly, what you see is what you get. And I love that about people. People that I want to surround myself with are straight shooters. They're not salesmen. They're not selling. They just give it to you straight. And with hard work and a little grit, success will find you, and you can find your way to financial freedom. So with that said, that's kind of my background. I'm still the same guy. Okay. Look, I'm a 9-figure net worth guy. I live very humbly. I'm a jeans and, t-shirt kind of guy. And I always say money doesn't make the man. So for all of you out there, I just heard the guy that had his first big hit, a $50,000 payday. That's awesome. But, don't let success ruin you along the way, because you know what? We're all the same. We're all the same. We all get up the same way. We put our pants on the same way. Some of us have a little more money than the others, but you know what? Stay humble, stay kind, and be gracious. That's always a great model to live by. So with that said, I'm all yours.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Pete. So guys, we're going to open up for questions. I do want to ask, because I know you've shared this publicly, okay, you exited partially twice, and some of these guys heard the story, but just give them the amount, because I want them to know going from, helping your dad in a store to selling this is a big jump in your life. So what were the amounts, just so these guys we're going to think big for 24, right?
Yeah, no, look, this is all public, so I'm not bragging, but the first time I sold the company, I sold 40% of the company for $47 million. Now that'll change your life in a hurry. And when you go from poor, now keep in mind, by the time I had sold that, I had a little money. I wasn't dirt poor, but I knew what hard work looked and felt like. So the first time I stepped away at 47 million. And then about 5 years later, the company was valued at 200 million. And I sold about another 40%. I still am the single largest shareholder of the company, and I'll probably have my third exit sometime in 2024. But, look, it's, financial freedom is a great gift. And when you come from places like I came from, as I said before, look, I have more than I can spend. And what comes with that, I think, is accountability and responsibility and how you show up every day. So now what I do is, as I grow brands and help other companies grow, I always stress, look, pull people along with you in the backdraft of your success. So hopefully when I meet my maker, that God will say, hey, Peter, well done, my son, you can go in, and so I try to help others and share a good message along the way.
I love it. I said I had one question. I'm going to ask you two, because I think these guys on their journey, Peter, sometimes it'll take, some people can do it in 30 days because there's some luck involved, but it can take a year sometimes when they get to their first, pay. And I know you went like 8 years and there was like, I don't know, whatever, I might have the years wrong. There was a small cash out, but then the next was an explosion. Can you just give the timelines, and then I'll jump into my question and open up to them?
For sure. Look, when I get from the time that it took me to get the opportunity to turn around that failing health club, and to the time where I owned it and then finally started franchising, that window was 20 years. Okay. 20 years. And when I when I had the first club, and it was a big facility, and I had built a few more small ones around there. I still hadn't created the small condensed brand, but it was a 20-year journey. And I'll tell you what, if somebody had told me it was going to take me 20 years to get to the real traction, to the real money making, I would have said, no, I'm out. I wouldn't have done it, because 20 years is a long time. But like I said, you never know how things evolve along the way. You just never know. And you never know when that light's going to come off, and you say, look, you know what? Screw it. I'm not going to go with these big boxes. I'm going to go with a smaller footprint. It's 1/10 the money. Instead of 40 employees, it's 2 employees. The unit level economics worked. And I've always been kind of a grinder, and I've always been really inquisitive and curious. So I dug in and looked at every corner, made sure that the optimization of profitability potential was there, that the unit level economics made sense. And once I felt I had all my ducks in a row, I stepped on the gas. And keep in mind, I didn't bring on partners. I knew that I could do this, right? And it took off like jet fuel. And you know what? There was 1 year that I opened 377 health clubs in 1 year. I was opening more than 1 health club a day. Okay. That's systems and processes, which is another thing I get back to Chris and Zach about. I always try to make these parallels: systems, processes. Look, you have to have you can't go into business, anything, willy-nilly. You can't sit around spitballing ideas all day long, because pretty soon you're like a dog chasing your tail. You never get any traction. So systems, processes, accountability, discipline, all those things lend itself towards success, whatever success looks like through your lens. And look, when you have something that's working, leveraging that success to where 1 + 1 can equal 3, that's the holy grail of winning right there. Okay. Doubling down. And there's so many times today with the work that I do for people, there's so many times that I have to get people to pull back a little bit and focus on what's really working for them. Okay. Because they're like a dog chasing their tail. They're not getting anything done because they're focusing on the minutia rather than the material items. We could talk about that as well.
No, I appreciate it. I asked that to hopefully spark, when I turn it over to these guys, questions about that grind, because that took time. So here was my opening question, just because we're coming up to a new year, right? And that's why I love having you on at the end of the year, especially. Love you having it always. But that is, maybe give us, like, if there's 2 or 3, whatever the number is, in a few minutes, what are your sort of big audacious goals or needle movers that you're working on for 24? Because I know you have them. You just came back from a major trip. Like, what's going on in your brain? I want to help everybody think bigger for 24, and then we'll turn it over to them.
I think that this is, the end of the year is certainly a time to do it, but I'm all for it. You know what? Don't wait for the end of the year. You should be doing what I'm about to suggest. I think you should do once a quarter, once every 6 months, definitely more than once a year. But here we are coming up on the end of the year. Take a financial inventory of what you're doing. Okay. A financial inventory. So what does that mean? The first thing I want you to look at is, what are you spending? Let's not worry about income yet. Let's worry about what are we spending? Is there any waste? And it takes real documentation, looking at your checkbook, looking at your register, looking at your Apple Pay, whatever your outflow of cash looks like. I make a point. Even in my case, think about this. 9-figure net worth guy. Peter, why do you care if you're spending a little here, a little there? I just don't like being sloppy. Okay. And that's my nature. Don't be sloppy. Don't be sloppy in life. Don't be sloppy how you show up every day. Right. So for me, it's accountability. So where am I throwing money out the window? Because you know what, if I'm going to throw money out the window, I would rather throw it at people who need it. Okay. So once again, you grow up poor, you have a real appreciation for the dollar and how hard it is to make it. So I look at, where am I spending it? Okay. And then what's changed? What's changed over the course of the year? Because you know what? Industries are always evolving. Look at your industry today. Interest rates are probably up 3 points from where they were a year and a half ago. All right. Hopefully with this next election, it comes back, we get Crazy Joe out of there, but that's a whole other topic. But from my perspective, so spending, any waste, what's changed? And then investments. I look, how are my investments performing? Look, some of my investments, I'm locked into them. All right. Look, not every pitch goes over the fence. Okay. You strike out some, you hit singles, you hit doubles. Every now and then you hit a grand slam. But at the end of the day, what's performing? What am I locked into? Okay. And then I start looking at my cash flow. So once I'm looking at my spending, once I feel like I've eliminated any waste, okay, then I start looking at what's my cash flow. Because where do I start? I look at all the spend, and then I start drawing lines through things that I'm going to discontinue. So every dollar that I discontinue, it falls right to my bottom line. Okay. It falls right into my cash flow bucket. Then I start looking at my investments. What does my cash flow look like? Hey, look, for me, I'm not employed. Okay. I'm not, for me, the only type of work that I get involved with today is with companies. I don't allow them to pay me. I only take equity in their company. If I'm going to get involved with your company, I need equity. Why? Because I feel like I can make a difference. All right. So for me, that's where I am. I have no cash flow, so I need cash flow to support my lifestyle. So these are the things that I look at. So from the top, I would look at my spending habits. I would identify any waste. I would look at my investments. How are they performing? Things that are not performing, that are where I'm not locked in. I would look at how can I pivot? What and why would I pivot? Well, I'm going to look at other opportunities that are out there. If I have something that's been flat for the last 3, 4, 5 years, I might, and if I'm not locked in, if I can pull that capital and get it working into something else that might be higher performing, I'm going to look at that. All right. And I look at things always. I've got one investment. The investment is flat, but it pays me a dividend. Okay. So I look at that dividend. I say, all right, that matters because that falls into my cash flow bucket. Okay. It's a publicly traded company. They pay me a dividend every quarter, and the stock is flat. The stock is actually down about 30% from where I bought it at, but my cash flow is good. Okay. So with that said, I'm all yours, man. I'll ask any questions you want.
All right, guys, the floor is yours, and we got you got a unique opportunity to be in front of someone like this. So, Steve, your hand went up, but you guys can raise your hand if you want. There you go.
Yeah. Well, you answered my first question, but I had 2 questions for you, Peter. One, when you first sold the first 40%, how did you find that investor buyer? Were they already in the company? How did you find that?
My company was growing so fast, Steve, that they were finding me. In fact, I had people calling me once every couple of weeks. I was getting a call from private equity saying, "Hey, look, we'd like to invest in your company." And I was saying, "Look, I don't need investors because I don't need cash." I was spinning off cash. Okay. So they found me, and here's another good point. Know when to take your first bite of the apple. Okay. So when I decided that I was going to sell a portion of my company, I always knew that I was just going to sell a minority interest. Why? Because I wanted to control the company, number one. But number two, it's a fiduciary responsibility for me as an entrepreneur to take some chips off the table. Okay. For myself, for my family, I needed to be able to check that box. So be honest with you. When I went to the market, I thought my company was worth about 30, 40 million. Okay. That's what I thought. I didn't know. I was pleasantly surprised when they told me it was worth 100 million. Okay. So I sold 40% for 47 million because I took the cash. I had about 7 million in the checkbook. So bottom line is 40% for 47 million. I could tell you where I was standing. I hope every one of you have the opportunity to experience that feeling. I could tell you, I was walking down the fairway of a golf course with 3 of my buddies, and I got a call. It was my attorneys and my accountants. And they called me and said, "Peter, just confirming the 47 million has landed in your checking account." I quickly went to my Wells Fargo app and I saw 47 million sitting in my checkbook. I tell you what, my eyes welled up, and my buddies are looking at me like, what's wrong? It was like no feeling I've ever had. That I at that moment, I literally looked up. I said, "I did it. I freaking did it." The kid from the 2-room schoolhouse, youngest of 7, dirt ass poor, quit college. I did it. Right? I knew my life would never be the same, and it hasn't. It hasn't been the same in a good way. I didn't let it ruin me. Like I said, you'd never know. I always appreciate when I meet people that have real money, and you'd never know it. Okay. They're not condescending. And you've heard me talk about this a lot in the 15 minutes you've had me on here, but look, I can't stress it enough. Money doesn't make the man. Nobody gives a shit. Okay. I mean, just be true. Nobody gives a shit. So just be humble, be kind, be gracious, be thankful, all those things. So
I love it.
Awesome.
That's
Yeah.
cool.
Thanks.
I have one
Thanks, Steve.
more question, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
you go
Yeah.
for it.
And also, golf has really only ever cost me money and sadness, so that's a pretty good round for you. When you got that first that cut that first $47 million check, what was your first investment after that? Just curious.
First major investment was, well, I put it to work for me. So I had a family office. When you have that kind of money, you have a team of people because there's no shortage of people grabbing for you. The more money you have, the bigger the target is on your back. And honestly, it gives me a way to fence people, because that way, when people approach me, hey, Peter, I got this deal for you. I say, look, thank you. And this is my canned response. I always say, thank you for thinking of me. I've got a family office. I'm just going to direct you to them. And if you could pitch them, and then what they'll do is they'll take all your information, and then we'll sit down once a month and we'll have a conversation. So it allows me, because it's friends, it's distant friends. You'd be surprised who comes out of the woodwork for you. So I'm very diversified in a number of different things right now. So when the market's up, down, and volatile, it doesn't, it still ebbs and flows, but not to the point where you're going to be bankrupt.
Very cool. Congratulations.
Yeah, no, thanks. I appreciate it.
Of course.
Thanks, Steve. I'm sure you'll think of more. Matthew, I'm going to try to go in order here. Matthew's in Canada. Peter.
Hey, Montreal, right on.
Matthew, you good? Or maybe you're tied up right this second. All right, Wendy.
Hi, Peter. My question is, when building a business, it's taking a lot longer than expected, and deals are not working out. Other than going back to my why, what else can I do to stay motivated and committed?
Well, so when you look at your business, so your business is taking longer, I always say, be careful that your happiness is not completely centered around your money. Okay. Because that's a big chase. Money is fast and it's fluid. And if you're always chasing money, I'll tell you this, even when you have money, you always want more. So I always try to tell people, try to find your peace outside of money, if that's possible. And being an entrepreneur, which all of you are, you're either entrepreneurs or you're aspiring entrepreneurs. And that's, to me, a great message for you. Just look, stay, get up and appreciate the grind, appreciate the wins. And you know what? Losing is part of winning. You're going to do some deals that are going to go south. That's part of it. Don't think that you're a failure. I promise you, anybody that's being honest with you, they're going to tell you that you're going to win some, you're going to lose some, and that's it. And I tell you what, when you're losing, just take a step back, acknowledge what happened, and try not to repeat it. But appreciate the loss, appreciate the road rash. And I always tell people too, early on, and even later, don't bet the farm ever. Okay, don't bet the farm, because it's a risky game. The all-in, double or nothing sucks. Okay, starting over from zero sucks. So you know what? You're better off, in these real estate deals. I love which is why I'm such big fans of Chris and Zach. And by the way, I'm not paid here today to do this. Okay, if these guys sucked, I'd tell you. Okay, so look, what I like about these guys is, I'd rather do 10 deals. I'd rather have a little bit in 10 deals than 25% in 3 deals or 40% in 2 deals, whatever. You know what I mean? Sprinkle it out a little bit so you got more balls in the air, because you're going to see, as the more balls that you have in the air as it relates to real estate, opportunity breeds opportunity. I promise you. Okay, so spread them out. Follow what these guys are saying. I've seen them win, and I've seen people within their program win.
I appreciate it, Pete. Matthew, you came back in, so I want to go to you. Where did you go, Matthew?
Hey, Matthew.
Hey, Peter, thanks for the time. In regards to, if someone, like with the 3 payday system, and all of us are in the high 6 here, so we all know it, there's an opportunity to make a great amount of income if the goal were to be able to create an enterprise, to really create enterprise value, to do a similar exit as you did, what would you say is needed to go beyond, just creating that 3 payday flow? Like, what would we need to do to get investment, private equity involved and to try and do an 8-figure exit, let's say?
Look, private equity is drawn to cash flow. Okay. Private equities is drawn to cash flow, period. So if it were me, if I was building my own portfolio of real estate, I would have some that are flippers. I would have some that I look at. And keep in mind, every time I'm flipping, I would get in a mindset that every time I'm flipping, I'm generating cash. Like the gentleman that had the $50,000 deal. Okay, was it Brad?
Kyle.
Okay, so $50,000 deal. So for me, my mindset would be, okay, I've got 50,000 coming my way. I would take a portion of that. I would set it aside because eventually I would want to have some that I'm just going to convert these into rental properties to increase my cash flow. Okay. Some are going to be house flippers. I'm going to flip them. I'm going to get in and out of them, but I'm going to take some of that cash that I pulled out, 50,000. I'm going to put some of it on the sideline and I'm going to put some of it into rental stuff, which is going to increase my cash flow. Okay. So eventually, once again, this is a slow game, especially if you're starting with one, but pretty soon you have one, then you have two, then you have three. Pretty soon that rental property is creating cash flow. And when you have cash flow, you can leverage the cash flow to get another property. So you've got this almost feels like a side hustle of rental income that you've got coming in that's feeding the beast. And then you've got these homes that you're flipping. Okay. It's all within the real estate model, but some of it is rental and some of it is flipping. That's how I would do it if it were me. And then as you start getting your legs under you and you start really getting the feel for what you're doing, make sure you don't overstep it. Make sure you don't get cocky. Okay. Stay within your wheelhouse of what's working for you, whether it's a given market, whatever it might be. But when you see other people that are doing it, sometimes you've got some people that could be good strategic partners. Maybe you got somebody that's on the front line of real estate or mortgages or whatnot, and they see people that are upside down on properties, and you're the first person that they call. Okay. So you're priming the pump a little bit on where you're going to be getting your leads from. You want to be the first call, not the last call. Okay. You want to be the guy picking the cherry deals. And here's the other side of it. Have cash on the sideline. I just did a podcast on this the other day. I tell you what, I always have dry powder on the sideline. Okay. Now look, just in perspective, but it doesn't matter how much you have. But for me, I've got about 5 million that I have on the sideline in a revolving line of credit. Okay. And I'll tell you why. When you get in volatile times, like we're right now, you got inflation that's high, you got interest rates that are high. There's a lot of people that got blindsided. Okay. So what happened? They're in a pickle. They're in a financial pickle. They call me and they say, hey, Peter, we'd like you to invest in our company. If you give us a bridge loan here, okay, if you give us $1 million, we'll give you X% on your money and we'll give you 5% of the company. Okay, right? Because I'm not going to do it just for interest. I'm going to have equity. All right. And then I listen to them. I ask questions. How did you get to where you are? Okay, what happened? Are you overspending? What is it? And they'll give me their explanation. And then I say, how soon do you need the money? They say, look, we need it in the next 30 days. And then I tell them, look, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll give you the money tomorrow. I'll put the money in your bank account tomorrow, but I want 10% or 15%. I give them the squeeze. Okay. I'll take 15%. I'll put the money in your checkbook tomorrow, or, by the end of the week, you'll have the money. I document everything. And so having some dry powder on the sidelines allows you to participate in the sweetheart deals, okay? Where you don't always want to be scrambling around. And now cash, it doesn't mean that you necessarily have to have cash sitting under your mattress, but with your bank, with the cash that you've got in the bank or tied up, you got to have a revolving line of credit that you can tap at any time to pursue these opportunities. That's just good business, especially in real estate, because people get upside down every day in this business. And the person holding cash wins every time.
Nice. Judy.
Okay. Hi, Peter. Thanks for your time today.
Of course,
I've got a couple of questions. What was one of the, I don't want to say mistake, but maybe biggest challenges that you had on your journey? and how did you overcome it and learn from it?
Well, biggest challenge is, coming from a small town. It was the biggest challenge was I trusted people too much. That happens, right? And look, I had probably one of my first 5 employees who ran a division for me. I trusted him like a family member, and he embezzled $3.5 million from me. And, so that was a big hiccup, and he spent it all. He spent it all on, I don't know on what, gambling, blow, hookers, blow, and gambling was where he spent it in Vegas. So, unfortunate. So there was, there was no recovering it. And what hurt more than anything was I literally trusted this guy. And so that was the biggest lesson. So the biggest lesson there was, look, and he had a very elaborate scheme put in place. Keep in mind, my company at the time, it was audited by one of the big 4 accounting firms, and they didn't catch it. It was just very elaborate, scheme that he had in place. And, so that one, it was a little bit of a gut shot, but I got through it. It is what it is.
Too. Hey, you started off really young, in this journey. Did you ever feel like, you had imposter syndrome or anything like that?
What is that? What's that called? Imposter? What does that mean?
Like, you can, but I can. I'm not good enough, right, Judy?
No.
Yeah, kind of self-limiting beliefs and things like that.
Insecurity. Insecurity. Hey, look, I think we're all a little insecure on one thing or another, right? But I didn't because I was such a grinder, and when I was 8 years old, here's a perfect, when I was 8 years old, I used to sell popcorn. My dad had a small grocery store in this little town that we grew up in. Okay. Little town, 1-horse town. My dad had a little grocery store, and I sold popcorn in front of it. And my dad early on, he gave it to you straight, which I appreciate about it. He said, hey, son, you're going to do one of 3 things. You're either going to be going to school, playing sports, or working for me. Okay. That's what I needed. I needed that clear line of sight. Okay, Dad, that's all I need to know through the lens of a 6 or 7-year-old. I got it. Right. So I'm 8 years old. I'm selling popcorn, and my dad walks by me one morning. I remember this like it was yesterday, but what a life lesson. He walks past me. I'm sitting behind this popcorn stand, just like I'm sitting here right now. Right. Probably had a dumb 8-year-old look on my face. My dad walks by me about 30 feet. He stops dead in his tracks. He does a 360 or does a 180, turns right back at me, starts walking towards me. He's looking right at me. I'm thinking, oh shit, what did I do now? He stops and he says, hey son, how are sales? And I straightened up. I was about ready to give him my 8-year-old dissertation of how sales were slow. I got about 5 words deep, and my dad sticks his hand up. He goes, son, your sales are slow because you got to get out from behind that counter and you got to go ask people if they'd like some of your fresh popcorn that you just popped. Okay. So I said, oh, okay, Dad. Right. I let him get away because I was a shy kid. Shy. I let him get out of sight because I didn't want him to see me crash and burn. Right. But so I started going out from behind the stand and going up to adults, pulling on their sleeve. Hi, my name is Peter, and I work at that popcorn stand right there. I just popped some popcorn. I think you're really going to like it. Would you like to try some? There was a little bit of the cute factor there. My sales doubled in the day. Doubled. Okay. So what did I learn? Hey, opportunity is not going to come to you. Go get it. So that was a great lesson through an 8-year-old lens. And I've been living that lesson my entire life. My kids, my family, my close friends, my inner circle, they say, man, I've never seen anybody work as hard as you do. Even today, I'm a hard worker. I always feel like the other shoe's going to fall. And maybe that comes from growing up poor, but I'm always working. But this to me is not work. I could do this. I could talk shop all day. I really enjoy doing this. So it's not work, but I'm not the kind of guy that's going to sit out back here and sunbathe. That's not my jam. That's not what rocks my boat. So anyway, I hope that helps.
Yeah. Thank you for your lessons.
Of course.
Sean.
Wow, that's awesome. Such great answers too, Peter. I really appreciate that.
Thanks.
I had a question for you. I'm very heavily involved in mindset, visualization, meditation, things like that. I'm wondering if that's anything that you have done or did you know that you were going to hit that 47 million? Like, did you see it before it happened? Like, what was that like for you?
Look, once I started getting traction, okay, like literally, when I built my first small club, okay, the first brand that I built, it was called Snap Fitness. And when I built that club, the first one, I didn't know. I knew this. The model made sense in my head. Keep in mind, I'd been in the fitness industry for 20 years. So I felt like I was a good student of human behavior, especially as related to the fitness space. So I built my first store. And when I looked at the unit level economics, I said, this thing is going to cash flow on about 200 members. Okay, I have 200 members. This thing's going to cash flow. I should be able to do that falling out of bed. Well, my hunch was right. As soon as I opened my first club, I sold enough memberships in 90 days to cash flow the business for the year. Okay. I wasn't, keep in mind, I was not thinking franchise. Okay. I just built this smaller model that made sense to me. I said, oh, okay. And I built that one in a mid-sized market. So then I said, I'm going to do another one. I built another one in an urban market, a big city market. Okay. Performed the exact same way. Remember earlier, I talked about unit level economics. Okay. The rent was more, but I could charge a little bit more, and I had a larger population to draw from. Same thing, less than 90 days, sold enough memberships, cash flow for the year. I remember coming home, I was married at the time. I remember coming home to my wife and I said, look, I think I'm onto something here. I think I might have a tiger by the tail. Okay, I wasn't sure yet. I said, I'm going to build one in a small town. So I built one in a little town of 3,500 people. And I said, if I can make it win there, I've got something. Well, I did. I put it in that little town. I needed about 140 members. My rent was $1,000 a month, and that included utilities, right? Well, the rest is history. Okay. Then the smart thing that I did, I didn't half-ass it. I had a law firm draft up my franchise agreement. I was going to get into franchising. I had no experience. And this is another thing, another important lesson. If I had $1 for every time somebody told me how I couldn't and how I won't and how it'll never happen, you know what I mean? People like that, I want to give them that, right? Because look, I'm a self-made guy. If you've got a little common sense, a little street smart, and you get that when you're poor, okay? And I tell you what, I had grit. I was not afraid to fail. I rolled up my sleeves. I had no partners, okay? I had no partners in this thing. No financial partners, nothing. So it can be done. I don't care if you're doing real estate, but the people out there that are the naysayers, the armchair quarterbacks that tell you can't, I tell you what, hard work and grit goes a long way. So, you know, once I had the trajectory, once I saw that it was working, I doubled down. Okay. Systems, processes, people. Okay. So even when I was doing 377, even when I was opening one club a day, more than one club a day, here's the reality. I had a number of different channels. You had real estate, you had build out, you had pre-sales, you had all these different things, ongoing support. So here's these lanes. I had somebody responsible for each one of those lanes. And I made sure everyone stayed in their lane. When somebody from lane 2 came over and said, hey, Peter, over in lane 5, they're not doing this, that, and other, I go, huh, that's not your job. You stay focused on lane number 1. You stay focused in your lane. Okay. I'm the head coach. My job is to look at all the lanes and let them get to about 90% capacity. Hey, Peter, we're getting slammed here. You're fine. You're okay. Okay. Let them get to about 90%. I put another human capital in there. Okay. Now their 90% efficiency drops down to about 65% because you got 2 people doing the same job. So before you know it, you got all the lanes filled, but maybe instead of having 1 person there, you got 7 people in there. At one time I had 120, 130 employees running the lanes. Okay. Systems, processes, don't overthink it. Stick to what you know, stay in your lane. And then it's all about growth and trajectory.
Awesome. Avi, one of the newest upgrades, Pete, to I6.
Okay. Hi, Peter, thank you very much. I had a few questions. You all like to kind of roll one into the other. So I'll ask, how did you get the original opportunity at the young age of 22? What did you actually do to turn that club around, and how did you know what to do with,
You know
I
what?
guess, with
It's
not a
a-
lot of experience?
It's a great question, but look, I've always been an athlete. Okay. And when I was 13, of all things, I played, football, baseball, basketball. But when I was 13, I picked up, of all things, a racquetball racket. Okay. In that little hometown that I grew up in, I picked up a racquetball racket. And sometimes how things just come natural to you. I can't explain it, but myself and my twin brother, we picked up these racquetball rackets. And at 13, well, it was a sport that I really excelled at. And, by the time I was 17, I was playing at the professional level, a sponsored player. By the time I was 19, I was one of the top players in the country. And so I was a touring pro by one of the largest racket manufacturers in the world. Look, you couldn't make a living at it. It sounds great. You didn't make any money, okay, which is why I left the sport. But I toured around the country, but I played. That's why I got the call from that club in my hometown. I was in that club every day playing, okay? So I was a little bit of a celebrity in that little town I was in. I was a big fish in a very, very small pond. Okay. And they said, hey, look, it's a long shot. They called me. Remember, 22, rocking the mullet. Okay. They called me. So that tells you how desperate they were. But what they didn't understand is grew up poor and I needed my shot. Okay. I knew that I wasn't going to make a living at racquetball, of all things. But I got in there, and by being in the court every day, meeting the people, and then back in my popcorn days, pulling on people's sleeves, complete strangers, would you like some popcorn? Those little life lessons allowed me to step into that club and make a huge difference. Okay, huge difference. I mean, my first day on the job was, really eye-opening for me. But it was a great lesson for me in turning that business around. And for me, turning that business around was very apparent to me what I needed to do. And I was successful at doing that.
Peter, it sounds like, let me jump in on an obvious question, because it sounds like you didn't, correct me if I'm wrong, get caught up in the how. You just put your head down and stacked as you went and figured it out. Is that accurate?
Look, yeah. When I walked into that club, when I got the opportunity, keep in mind, they paid me $16,000 a year. $16,000 a year, I had to live at home. 16 grand a year, what are you going to do with that? Okay. I lived at home. All right. So 16 grand a year, I walked into that business and once again, they didn't put a ceiling on how much I could acquire. I walked into the club as a pigsty. Okay. It was a pigsty. So I had a company-wide meeting. I had about 50 employees. Keep in mind, I am about the youngest of the 50 employees. I'm 22. Okay. So I hold a company meeting and I say, hey, everybody, come to the club tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock. We're going to give this club a deep clean. Okay. So the next morning, that night, I've got my yellow legal pad and I'm going to divide everyone up. We're going to divide and conquer, because the first thing this club needs is a deep clean. I get there, 8 o'clock, everybody's there. And before I'm ready to start dividing people up, this one lady raises her hand. Her name was Barb. Barb says, hey, Peter, I've just got something to say. And I said, by all means, Barb. Most of the people, I didn't even know their name, but I did happen to know her name. And she goes, I'm just speaking on behalf of everyone here, but we don't clean. Okay, no, my first day, keep in mind, my first day. I've never managed people in my life. I came from the popcorn stand, right? Never managed people. She goes, we don't clean. You could have heard a pin drop, right? And I looked at her and I took a page out of my dad's playbook. I pointed right at her. I said, and you also don't have a job. And I pointed to the door. Okay. Now I got people's attention. All right. Now, what ended here? Look, she ended up staying. But as I divided and conquered, I said, I gave people their jobs. I took the bathrooms. Okay. That sent another message across the bow. Okay. Say, look, the first message is, look, we don't know who this cowboy is, but he's not playing. Okay. That's message number one. Number two, he took the crappy job, no pun intended. He took the bathrooms, okay? Because that's, everybody's thinking, who's going to take the crappers, right? I took it, which let everybody know I took that out of my dad's playbook, because I sat from my 8-year-old lens watching my dad. My dad would carry out groceries. He'd stock the shelves. He'd do the books. He'd work the cash register. He put himself above nothing, which is such a great quality. And I tell you what, if you're in a position where you're leading people, if you're willing to jump in the trenches, if you want to get people to walk on fire for you, If you want that to happen, they got to trust you. They got to know that you've got their back. And when you do that, that's where the magic happens. I tell you what, building an empire is on human capital. Okay. It's not luck. It's people. Make no mistake about it.
Sweet. Sorry to jump in there, you guys. Dan.
Yeah, Pete, thank you so much for sharing. Have you ever really been in a W-2 position? I know many of the on the call this afternoon, that's where I'm coming from, been there for many years, trying to retire out and so forth, for a very good position. And so having that mentality, working through it, having some other businesses on my own up throughout the years, but it sounds like with your experience coming from what you've done has been more entrepreneurial. For someone that many of us in the same position with W-2s trying to make that transition, what advice would you give?
Well, I think W-2, look, that's great. And I tell you what, most entrepreneurs started with a W-2. Okay. I mean, for me, essentially, I was a double W-2 when I was getting paid 16 grand a year. All right. But my incentive was to turn the business around so it was profitable. So for me, it starts with being able to squirrel away some dollars on the sidelines, which is going to allow you to have dry powder so you can seize opportunity. And you have to crawl, walk, run. Okay, there's no easy path to it. Okay, don't wait for the lottery to come. You got to just start squirreling it away. And I'll tell you the other thing: when you start making money, when you start getting one property that's generating cash flow, and you take that cash flow and you can leverage it into another property, pretty soon, before you know it, you start with one, then you have 3. In 5 years, you might have 6. But I tell you what, when you sit back and you look in the rearview mirror from where you were 5 years ago, now you have 6. You look at it, as you increase your cash flow, as long as you don't start exponentially increasing your spend. This is where people get in trouble. They start seeing the cash flow and they start elevating their lifestyle, and that cash flow turns into outflow rather than getting the money back working for you. Okay. I'm not saying don't take a portion of it to enhance your lifestyle a bit, but don't make the mistake of taking, to me, like if I'm trying to really get to where I want to be, like the promised land, if I'm cash flowing $1,000 a month, just putting it in real easy terms, if I'm cash flowing $1,000 a month, I would make darn sure that 750 of that 1,000 is getting put aside to do the next deal. Okay. Like I'm going to take 25% and I'm putting 75% back in. All right. That, like, bar none. And I don't care where you live in. That's why I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid of being poor, because I grew up poor. Okay. I know what poor feels like. So when you know what the bottom feels like, you're fearless. Okay. Because I know I can survive there. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to go back there anytime soon, but you know what I'm saying.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah.
Ryan, thanks for your patience, buddy. Also met on a podcast, Peter, Ryan and I, and Ryan just joined High Six.
Oh, right on. Congrats.
Hey, thanks so much. Pleasure to meet you, and thanks for the nuggets so far. This has been great. Couple things. So as Chris mentioned, I do host a podcast. We interview successful entrepreneurs and investors all the time. And so you mentioned that opportunity whispers. I'm finding myself, maybe this is a personal struggle I'm going through right now, but there's a lot of information. It's almost like information overload and a bunch of different strategies that I don't want to fall into shiny object syndrome. There's, you could go flip a house, you could do creative financing, a lot of different things. And sometimes strategic business partnerships opportunities open up, and then investing opportunities open up. So I'm curious, how you vetted those things over the years, especially once you had this lump sum of cash dumped in your checking account. I'm sure people are coming out the woodwork. How do you go through and navigate where you should pick your lane and kind of stick with one when there's a lot of things flying at you every day?
Yeah, that's such a relevant question, Ryan, in today's day and age. First and foremost, most people out there today are all hat, no cattle. Okay. They're all hat, no cattle. They're trying to sell. I tell you what, especially the internet, it's people out there trying to sell a theory. Okay. They don't have practical experience. That's why I always love it when I get these entrepreneurs and they talk business theory. I don't give a shit if you're a Harvard grad. Have you been in the business? Have you actually had to make the decision where you've got hundreds of families banking on the fact that you're going to make the right call every day? Okay. Because until you've been in those shoes, save it. Okay. Those are critical decisions that are made that affect people's lives. So the first thing I always look at is, who's ever pitching it, have they walked the talk? Okay. Do they have practical experience in what they're doing? just on the internet, people that I know. I did some podcasts with some of these individuals, but there was about 25 people listed in this lawsuit where they all lost. And you know what it was? Selling vaporware. Talking about guys standing in front of jets and yachts and homes and cars that they don't own, constantly flexing. If you see somebody out there that's constantly flexing their bullshit rap, just turn and run. Okay. And you know, that's always been a hot button for me, because I see these people that are naive, getting new into the game, and they want to chase the money. They want the lifestyle that they're seeing on TV, and they think that there's a short path to it. The reality of it is it doesn't exist. Yes, of course, some people got lucky. I get it. But I wouldn't bet my future on that. I would bet people that have got the real hands-on experience that can show me, hey, look, this is what we've done. This is how we did it. I'm going to show you how to do it. And we're going to hold your hand through the process. To me, slow and steady wins the race. And as I said earlier, the more cash you have, here's the truth bomb for sure. The more cash you have, the more opportunity presents itself. So be patient. Be patient. Squirrel away your cash. Get it working for you. Increase cash flow one house at a time. It's returning cash. You're taking that cash, you're putting into other homes. Before you know it, you wake up, you're in an area, you're in a place where you've got cash flow and you've got leverageable assets that if you need to convert something to cash, you have the ability to do it. Any bank in the planet will leverage against a physical asset like a home all day long. Okay. So eventually you're paying down your debt, the property's appreciating, you're getting cash flow. Look, that's Shangri-La in the investment world. Okay. But you got to start with one, then you go to two. Winning is a game of patience. Okay. It's a game of patience. In today's day and age, people think they want it fast. They want it quick. I tell you what, the quicker it is, the more risky it is. Make no mistake about it. And I've seen people lose a freaking fortune on trying to chase the quick dollar. With quick return comes quick risk, comes high risk, I promise you.
Cool. Thanks.
Thanks, Ryan. Appreciate you being here, buddy. Matthew, you back up. Go ahead.
Peter, where do you find good talent? You know, you talked about everybody staying in their lane and all that kind of that level. So what's your advice on recruiting or talent finding, basically? I have another funner question after.
Yeah, look, you know what? If I'm looking for human capital, I got to identify first and foremost. I got to know exactly what I'm looking for when I go into it. Okay, what exactly do I want to find? So I understand the profile that I'm looking for, first and foremost, and then I find people that might be doing something. Keep in mind, if you're on a platform where you've got technology working with you, you've got assets at your disposal, and you find someone else out there who's trying to do the same thing that you're doing, pull them into the fold. Because look, they're out there floundering, trying to figure it out on their own. If you've got a tried and true process, you know, having a coworker with you, you know, there's a guy in my building here that is a real estate agent. And I met him 3 years ago down in the lobby of all places. Today, he's got 7 realtors working underneath him. Okay. Why? Because he's utilizing some technology that they weren't available. Okay. So look, it's out there. Don't just grab bodies to fill bodies. Make sure that they're pulling deep on the oars. Make sure that they're adding something to the table, that they're hungry. All right. That they've got grit and they've got the staying power to get through some of the hard months.
Cool. All right. And what about tactically? Like, you know, do you hire recruiters? Do you post job ads? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
You know what? If I'm in your space, you can very easily find out the people out there who are hustling. And I tell you what, you find the agencies where you've got a guy, you know, he's got his name on the park benches. He's out there, he's advertising, he's doing all these things. He's not your guy. But I promise you, his number 3 guy or his number 4 guy is your guy. Okay. Your number 3 here, his number 3 or his number 4 guy. Just like I was just consulting with a company just earlier this morning, and they said, look, we're going after this company or that company. And they were like the number 1 and number 2. And I listened to these guys, I listened to their whole PowerPoint, and they said, Peter, what do you think? And I said, look, if I'm one of the top 3 that you picked there, I'm not coming. Okay. Go to the number 4 guy. The number 4 guy, he wants to be number one. Okay, he wants to be number one. He's going to lean in so much harder. He's going to bring you so much more value than what you have. You don't have to go because he wants to be number one, and you're showing him the plan that you're laying out for him shows him a path, a clear path to leapfrog number 3, and for damn sure be right neck and neck with number 2, because he's already growing. He's already growing, but you're going to give him a 5-year, jet fuel start to get to where he needs to be. Look, and if you want to talk strategic, let's talk about getting to here. And now the enterprise value of your company is worth so much more because you're playing in this another playing field. Okay, so all these things, that's all the art of the deal. I talk about this all the time: how to structure a deal, how to create a narrative that makes sense. That's truth. You're not selling snake oil; it's the truth. I'm going to show you I'm going to show you a way to where you can make your company exponentially be worth 25% more in a very short period of time.
Perfect. And funner question, if you'll allow me. At your stage in life, where you've your accomplishments, you can choose to live anywhere in the world, more or less. Where do you choose to spend most of your time, and why?
Well, I'm in Florida right now, no state tax. Okay, so I made that decision about 6 years ago. But
you're on like the 40th floor or something, right? Right now.
I've got a great penthouse here. I live a great life. Okay. The little country boy, little country bumpkin from Wilmer, Minnesota. But I've got a great view of the ocean right here. I got a great life here. But look, every summer I go back to Minnesota. Okay. And that's where I grew up. I mean, I'm that country boy in Minnesota. I spend 4 months of the year in Minnesota. I spend 8 months here in Florida. So I like Florida. I live in Miami. Sometimes I don't like it. I always threaten my girlfriend that someday I'm going to sell this and buy a couple 100 acres in Montana. I threaten her with that. She's not having any of it. We'll see. Someday I might win that battle.
And when you go back, you're on the lake. I've seen that. It's this nice pad, obviously, and it's sitting on the lake out there, Matthew.
Yeah, it's real peaceful place. Real peaceful. It's the antithesis of Miami. It's on a peninsula. It's very, very beautiful, very comfortable, very, very secluded. I love it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kyle.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, Peter. I love how you're talking about Brian. I see myself as a leader as well, and I was just kind of curious, when you were starting out, what kind of hours of the week were you working on average? And then now, as time has gone, you've grown and systems in place, what kind of hourly weeks are you working now?
Yeah, look, when you're an entrepreneur, and especially when you're hungry, and being poor is pretty good motivation, I'll be honest with you. And so for me, I never really looked at how many hours a week I had to work because I was working all the time. Because the answer was I gave it whatever it took. Okay. And I didn't get married for the first time until I was 32, and I was married for 22 years. So people say, I used to say I had a failed marriage, but I had a guy tell me, hey, Peter, 22 years isn't necessarily a failed marriage. I had 3 great kids, and so I'm fortunate. But anyway, up until I was married, I was giving it whatever it took because I was determined. And I also found that the harder I worked, the more successful I became. And it was very, the adrenaline of getting into a business. I promise you guys, if you buy your first house and you flip it, you get cash flow and you see the full circle of the transaction, it's not going to take you long to take a step back and say, okay, how do I replicate that 6 times this year or five times this year? And then you put yourself over the next year. If I can do this 2 years in a row, my cash flow is going to grow by exponential. And now it allows me to do 10 deals. And then you go, wait a minute. I can't do 10 deals by myself. Now what do? You get a mini me of you where you give them a piece of the action. And pretty soon you've got 1 or 2 people pulling on the oars with you, doing deals, crawl, walk, run. All right. And that's the key in everything. So, from early on, I worked my tail off, but it never felt like work because I was my own boss. I was blazing my own trail. Now today, how much work do I do? Look, it drives my girlfriend crazy, because when you're on like me, my phone will ring. If I've got people that are depending on me to give them an answer or give them clarity of a business situation or a personal situation that they're in, that's part of what my job is. Okay. And I do that. Why? Because I'm compassionate. Okay. I haven't lost that compassion. I got that from my mother and my father. Look, you know what? If you're blessed to have the life that I have, giving back is part of that. In fact, it drives Forbes crazy. Forbes, if it doesn't make any sense, but look, it's my game and I get to call the rules. So my game is this. If I have a 21, 22, 23-year-old call me and say, hey, you know what, I've got this idea, blah, blah, blah. I'll consult them for free. Okay. Consult for free. If you're a business and you call me, I'm $1,000 an hour and I'll give you 2 days. After 2 days, I'm going to make a decision whether I think I can help you. And if I can help you, then it's going to be equity in your company. Otherwise, we part ways. It's no problem. It's no problem. There's other people out there. But for me, if I'm going to help you, it's going to cost you equity in your company. And if you're 22 and you're just trying to find your way, it's free, right? That's my way of giving back. And I love nothing more when I get calls from people. I've helped hundreds of young entrepreneurs, and nothing gives me more joy when they call me and they say, hey, you are right on that. And this is it. And this is what I'm doing now. Right. I love that. That's what it's all about.
And Peter's done that for, I think, all the chairman's one-on-one calls. And Kyle and everyone, Peter coaches like you guys are used to, higher level, of course, but meaning how succinct and clear. Like I'll get Peter, you'll be saying, okay, I put my shoes on, I'm going to run to the car. We got a few minutes, and I'll get the more advice in that 5 minutes that I've gotten, the last few months. So
Yeah.
very, very, very to the point.
I take calls. Look, I take calls. I might be driving, whatnot. If I've got the time, I'll give you the time. It's no problem. It's not a hassle. And I'll tell you, hey, look, and don't be disappointed if I say, hey, okay, what can I help you with? I'm going to get right to it. I'm not going to exchange a lot of pleasantries. I get right to it, which it's all good, right? It doesn't mean I'm not interested. I value your time and I value my time.
Paul, you're up, buddy.
Okay, Peter, I had to hop on a little late here, so I let me know if you've answered this already. And thanks for taking the question. So the question is, how do you suggest someone go about planning for the next year? Like, some people talk about the boulders, rocks, and pebbles approach, or some people talk about figuring out what your vision is and what that's going to cost, and then backing your way into what you need to do. Do you have any particular way that you would suggest?
Yeah, first of all, vision and traction, it starts with cash flow. Okay. I mean, that's the bottom line. You got a lot of people, they got a lot of great ideas, and it's OPM, other people's money. And I mean, look, your plan looks great, but you don't have any money to execute the plan. If you think somebody's just going to come along and invest in your plan it's not going to happen. It's too long a road. So I always say to start, I look at my spending. Okay. I take a financial inventory. What is my outflow of cash? I look at the
Peter, let me help Paul. Paul, he did this at the very beginning, just so you don't. Everybody has to go through that again. So go back and watch I think it was the first question, actually.
Yeah. It was
yeah. Go back and watch that. Actually, go back and watch all of it.
Yeah, I will. Okay. All right. So sorry about that.
No, you're good.
And then, listen, I have another question, I guess. So I think maybe the last time that you were on one of these masterminds, you mentioned the importance of taking Friday off, and I struggle with that because I'm working every day right now, and I guess maybe give me a reality check. Like how important is it to just freaking take the day off? I just find myself I find that really hard to take a day off.
Law firm, Peter, for context, he runs a law firm and then he does this on the side.
Yeah. Hey, look, you know what? I suck at that too. All right. But in theory, I try to say, hey, Peter, Friday's your day, right? Whether we're golfing with some buddies or whatnot. So Friday's my day, but it doesn't always work that way. Okay.
Yeah.
But I'm not too hard on myself. But here's the good news. The underlying message there is that you're cognizant of balance. Okay. And for all of you out there, make no mistake about it. Life is short. You never know when your ticket's punched. So balance. Make sure you've got your work time. All of us, we have it. We've got our work time. You've got, your family, your faith, and time for yourself. you know, that's it. And unfortunately, that work bucket takes a big portion of it. All right. But just make sure that your time that you're spending with your family, for yourself, with your friends, it's all balanced. You know, my girlfriend knows, hey, look, I got to have time with my buddies. Okay. I'm not talking about going out to the clubs. I'm way past that, but going golfing or going fishing or doing something that I enjoy. She understands that keeps me in a good place, right? Just like work is a good place, but I make sure that when I'm in the game, I'm present. When I'm with my kids who are adults now, I'm present. I'm listening. I'm helping. With my friends, I'm present. With my girlfriend, I'm present. And sometimes I fail miserably in every one of those categories, okay? Because I'm human. We're all flawed, but my intent is always there. I'm always cognizant of it. And as long as you're cognizant of it, you're in the game. Just don't be so hard on yourself, okay? But be cognizant of it. Because there's a lot of people that aren't, you know. My dad was not. My dad was a total worker bee. But it wasn't until I got older, I understood, hey, look, he had 7 kids he was trying to feed, and we were poor. So God bless him for getting up every day and, you know, strapping on the boots and going and getting her done. He went to work at dark. He'd come home dark. Many times he'd come home hangry. You know, when he used to come into the house, and he wasn't a tyrant, but look, he was hungry and tired, and 7 kids. We would scramble around straightening the pillows up when he'd come in the door. You never know if you were going to get happy dad or pissed off dad, right? But what a great lesson, okay? I saw the value of hard work, and you know, he's 93. He's a rancher in South Dakota, right? So he's just a hardworking dude. Got a 70-year-old girlfriend. I couldn't be happier for him.
That's awesome. Adam.
Thanks for chatting today, Peter. It's been insightful. Something that you mentioned earlier that we've been hinting around, you spent those 16 before you were 17 and professionally playing racquetball. You were busting your butt. And I think that's something that gets overlooked a lot of times when we think about how long it takes to get to a certain point. Put your head down, and it was 98% perspiration to get to where you started. And there's always that journey that just stuck out in my head when you were describing your process. It wasn't, oh, I showed up and I could do this. It was, I showed up every day for how many years before you achieved the ability to take over that club. So just something to think about.
No, hey, look, Adam, I appreciate that. And you know what, you guys, I mean, I'm a Christian and I'm blessed. And I always think about it. I reflect about the life that I was given, okay, the life that I was blessed with. And I honestly think, you know, being the youngest of 7 kids, we were always starved for attention. And look, don't feel sorry for me, but my mother never told me she loved me my entire life. Never. I never heard that out of my mom's mouth. My dad told me once, when I was 16 years old, I could tell you the chair that I was sitting in when he told me, okay? I was 16, all right? But, so always starved for attention, okay? Always starved for approval. So what does that breed? Think about it now. I pick up a racquetball racket. I don't just play racquetball at like I'm kicking everybody's ass in my little hometown. I become one of the best players in the country. Why? I was in the court. I was driven, okay? In fact, when I started my first brand, you can get a kick out of this, and God bless my dad. But when I started my first brand, I had about maybe 200 locations. And my dad says to my oldest brother, he says, hey, my oldest brother's name was Bill. He says, hey, Bill, can Peter make a living at that? That shows you how out of touch he was. Now, when I sold the company, literally 3 years later, I sold 40% for, like I said, 47 million. It became public. It was in the news. It was in the Minneapolis Star Trib. Okay. It was they make nowadays nothing's secret. Nobody's got a secret. Anyway, it was in the Star Trib. I get a phone call, and it's my dad. And he goes, Peter, let me understand. Did I just hear that you sold your company for $47 million? And there's dead silence. I said, no, Dad. He goes, God, I didn't think I sold 40% for 47 million. And he goes, holy shit, son. Now I said, hey, Dad, I can't thank you enough for giving me the work ethic and giving me a front row seat to what the American dream can look like. So I can never repay you that debt. So, you know, there's something to it. There's something to that. And I've always taken that and leveraged it to, you know, I'm sure my dad, you know, today, and, you know, now he loves it. Okay. Unfortunately, you know, my dad grew up very, very poor as well. And growing up poor, he always put the value on life by how much money you had. Okay. That's just where he came from, that, you know, money brings respect, accountability, all these things. And look, that's the era he came in. And it's easy for people to fall into that. And what I'm very cognizant about is just because you have money, you get favor. And I'll be honest with you, as unfair as it is, it's true. Okay. It's true. When you have a lot of money, in many cases, you don't wait in lines, you get favor at restaurants, you know, all these things, it comes with it. Don't be, but to me, when that happens to me, when I'm blessed with with those blessings, those favors, if you will, with that comes accountability. For instance, when I'm invited to a charity, I know what my role is. Okay. I mean, they're inviting me because they want me to open my wallet. Okay. Of course. So I'm very aware of what comes with that. And that is an important message on wherever level you fall into financially, that understand I'm a big advocate of, look, help people along the way in whatever that looks like. I mean, and there's nothing off the table. I mean, look, this is another thing that's public. Sometimes in Miami, I hop on my bike. I bought this little trailer on Amazon. Okay. I got a deal worked out with the local bakeries around here. I get day old cookies, cupcakes. I go to Publix, I buy a couple of cases of water, and you know where I go? I ride my bike. I got my baseball cap on, t-shirts, shorts, and I ride my bike through the hood of Miami. Okay. And I pull up on homeless people. And I pull up, hey, would you like a cupcake? Would you like a cookie, a bottled water? And I sit down with them. Those that want, those that where I can feel that they're engaging. And I ask them, hey, how'd you get here? What happened here? I can promise you, no one that's homeless wants to be there. You wouldn't believe all the hard luck stories that you hear. But once again, there's never been a time that I've got on my bike and rode home that my heart is not overflowing. Okay, that's an example that doesn't cost you diddly, but your time. That's why I would say my most valuable asset is my time. It's sure as hell not my wallet. So I can bring more value to the world doing this than I can by opening my wallet, in my opinion.
Pete, awesome stuff. And you gave us almost double what you said. So I say this every time you're on the call. So I just appreciate you pouring out. And I know you love doing the Q&As. And we got a bunch of nuggets, to say the least, huh, guys?
Yeah, that was awesome, Pete. Thank you so much.
That was awesome. For sure.
I appreciate it, guys. I'm glad. I hope you found it helpful. Chris, Zach, you guys, you're the best. Keep doing what you're doing. You know what? You're helping a lot of people along the way, and good stuff. So you guys, if you're part of this group, just lean in on these guys. Get the most out of them. Just squeeze the juice out of them.
Pete, thanks, buddy. Have an awesome holiday. I know we'll be texting, but have an awesome holiday.
Right on. Thanks, brother.
Thank you. Take care. You guys, towards the end, I'd love to get some high points, some ahas. We'll do that as final thoughts, okay?
Yeah.
I would suspect there was some nuggets in there. If not your pointed question, then one of the stories, right? I think Steve, you've probably, I don't know, five or six times now you've been with him, and you just get, he tells the same story, you get another nugget out of it.
Mm-hmm.
You guys, first, do you have any questions about that relationship or anything that was said or anything like that? I just don't want to like close it off without asking you that. Anything at all?
There's like a comment wise. I mean, how often on social media, guys, do you just see highlight reels of people that we think are like Peter, right? Incredibly wealthy and made all the right decisions, but we have the opportunity to be able to see inside how many years and the uphill in the sand, how long he did that. It's all commitment, right? I mean, opportunities continue to show up for people who continue to show up. It sounds like he spent well over a decade, working on this dream.
Prepping to win.
Yeah, I know that a year, 2 years in this business, 3 years, 5 years, whatever it is in this business may be difficult, right? But it's people like Peter, people like us, who, even with all the ups and downs and difficulty, if you continue to show up, you continue to develop, you continue to be on that path of success, and you don't know when your break's going to be. He didn't know when it was. So I love everything he said. I was going to say one of these things for positive for the end, but it's such a simple thing. He said, crawl, walk, run. Like, that is so simple and so easy to understand. But when you look at your path as an entrepreneur, how impactful those 3 words in a row were for me. Were like, wow, that makes so much sense.
Yeah,
And how
many
did he say hard
nuggets.
work and grit?
Yeah. Yep. You guys, I'm thinking instead of having like he's talked to all the chairman, some of the, maybe not some of the brand new chairman. So if you haven't talked to him, I'll set you up. But in the high 6, why don't we do this? I know he'll agree to it. Why don't we do like Kyle? You got a deal coming up with a buyer. As soon as you get your first buyer deal done, if you want a private call with Peter, I'll set you up. How's that? As a way to not flood him. So we'll go on buyer deals as soon as you guys get your first one. If you already have one, you haven't had a call, or if you're in chairman's, you haven't had a call, private message me, please. All I do is I text them. I say, is it okay? Here's their name. They'll be calling you. You just call on your own. He doesn't schedule because he'll take a few minutes and you'll get a ton of nuggets. Is that fair enough?
Yep.
Good deal.
It's awesome.
All right. Let's see. We didn't at the beginning because he jumped on early. I'm just looking if I had any housekeeping. I did have 2 things I want to bring up. One is just a book. Nick is on, and our core team is going to be going through this book. But and I'll explain to you. In 2018, I hired a efficiency consultant. He came into our office in Newport, and he sat with us. We were a tiny team then, and he ripped through a bunch of efficiency things that to this day Nick and I still use. And then I am paying him to come in to spend a day with the chairmans in January. And so I grabbed his book and I told the chairmans to grab his book. But man, he's incredibly talented at efficiency, meaning the way you run your life, your business, your apps, your communication. So his book is Come Up for Air. I would strongly suggest, I know I already told the chairmans, but I would strongly suggest you get it. It's a super easy read, fun read, and you will, as you go, pull nuggets out and put them into play or on the spot. And he has resources on his book website. So Come Up for Air, Nick Sonnenberg. And for those of you in chairman, he'll be hanging out with you in January, the first day. So that's one, just housekeeping. Second is we talked about the offset a little bit, but it made me think that I'm not talking about it enough. And that was because Steve and Nick were there. It was just the fact that once you guys get a portfolio, and a portfolio could be 3 properties, that you have so many other options. We're not in this box of, Peter kind of alluded to it without me even telling him that, but you're not in this box of, I got to do a rent-to-own buyer and I got to cash this out in 2, 3, or 4 years. You're not in that box for all your properties. You can be, but remember, we haven't done this in a while. Maybe we'll do it in March. And that is the concept of wealth stacking, I called it. That's once we get you to at least 3 is a good spot to kind of stop and look at your 3 properties or your 5 or your 6 and say, okay, how can I turn this sandwich into a sub 2? How can I turn this sub 2 into a more lucrative deal? You look at each deal. We do it with you, and we analyze how you might exit differently or stay in it longer. What I mean by differently, and then or turn it into a long-term rental if that's the case. So you have all these options. I don't want you to think that you're just stuck, because on a lot of podcasts, Ryan, the host will say to me, "You guys didn't," but the host will say, "Yeah, well, how come you guys all your properties that you got to get out of?" And I say, oh, "Okay, this is gonna be like a whole seminar here." No, you do not have to get out of. It's your choice. So keep that in mind. Nothing else than a thought. And as you get some more properties or get your first few, we'll do some wealth stacking with you guys. Any questions on that? I'm rattling that off as a brain teaser, but if you have any questions, fire away. Let's see. Year-end stuff. I talked at the event, the last event virtually, a couple weeks ago, about you being clear on your 24 plan. I know Steve has a couple of comments on this, but I didn't address the other side of that because the same holds true for you talking to your sellers. This is kind of script related, but again, this is just an awareness for next year. Your sellers will react to your clarity with respect to your scripts, just like you will perform or not based on clarity with your business plan, meaning they totally distrust when you're not clear. And you may not know that, but subconsciously, that's what's going on. So clarity is important with your business plan. Sure, we did all that this year. Most of you did it. Clarity is also super important when you're on the phone with your seller. I wrote your sellers trust clarity and distrust ambiguity. So important for you to know that. And that means when you're brand new, how fast can you get through the ambiguity and the stumbling on the scripts? You do that by call critiques. It's the fastest way you can do it. I'm gonna bring this up again because it keeps coming up. People asking me about the old, kind of like the old clan, the old high six people. One of them's Bill Rice. He's working with me and Nick and Steve now on our own team. We surfaced and wanted to kind of be back around to all of us. And that is, someone said, how come it came up in core, I think, in our offsite. What was done differently when you started high six? That's what they asked me. And Mike McCready's came in at the tail end of that too. So he saw some of this because they all did deals. That's what the question came at our core meeting. And I said, well, there was only 15 of us, first of all, or 10 in the whole company. And every single one of them, there was no technology. We had no Slack. There was nothing going on like done for you. We all did call critiques and did deals, call critiques, deals, call critiques, deals. And we didn't get sidetracked with any of the minutia. CRMs, all that stuff. If you're a techie, great. When Ryan and Corey asked me about CRMs, I said, if you guys are techie, do it. If you're not, don't touch it. Because we're getting sidetracked with all this stuff. So I just want to make sure that I told you guys, I share with you guys what I said to the team at the offsite, because I still to this day don't get caught up in a lot of that stuff. So that was the answer I gave them. So again, more on kind of like that clarity. Actually, write this down, you guys. I hope everybody's taking notes. Write down 2 words. Write down reaction. You know, that when I say reaction, I'm talking about like, knee jerk, putting out fires, no plan, just reacting all day, rat race, chaos, confusion. That's what I mean by reaction. Now do this right underneath that, write creation. You see, if you look at the 2 words, what's the difference in those 2 words? Because creation is what? Clarity, confidence, right? That's what that rings. What's the difference between those 2 words, though, letter-wise?
So one
Can
letter.
anyone see it? Can anyone see it?
Just the one letter.
C.
The R
Yeah,
and the
all you
C.
did is you moved the C to the front. That's all you did. So I wrote down 2 things with that. When you put the C out front, number one, you can see because you're not reacting all day, right? You're creating and you're thinking through your clarity and you think it through for 24. And number 2, you're in control. Right? So simple. So simple. So again, just for 24 thoughts and mind teasers here, you pretty much run things instead of things running you. So I'm on kind of like the kick of the efficiency and the clarity and all that. We've got to put that behind us for next year. Adam, question, buddy.
You asked me the question, and my brain went blank, but he can not be replaced by efficiency. When you, like the CRMs, great, but if you're not dialing, it doesn't matter how efficient you are.
100%.
That was something that hit when you were talking.
I had a sign on my wall, guys, after the crash. And it said, right where I was prospecting, because I had a booth that I would stand up at. And it said, massive action is the best revenge. Massive action. It's all you get on. It's phone work when you start. And I think I shared this with Adam, coincidental to his question. When I started back after the crash, I did one thing. I called from 8:30 till noon. Now, some of you have W-2s. My point was, I knew that's one thing I had to do. And then to Peter Taunton's advice to some of you earlier, he said, then you'll train someone. Okay, so then we train someone, then we train someone else, then we train someone else. It's not all you for life. It's all you at the beginning to get that boulder going. To your question, Pete. Sorry, Adam. Let's see, Steve. So I don't get off of it. You and I were talking today, and you just made a quick blunt comment about business plans. Did you have anything else you want to share on that?
Yeah, so obviously you guys know who you are. We got a bunch of business plans in that we've critiqued and then scheduled strategy sessions, which we've already had or have some in the future. So everybody that did do that, that's awesome. It's incredibly important. And the reason why it's so important is especially if you guys have spent over 6 months in this business and you're going into the next year, you can't be going into the next year with just blindly and assuming what you did in the last 6 months or year is going to work the next year. So the whole point of this is if you have not done your biz plan yet, and we have not received it, and we have not seen it, and we have not scheduled a strategy call with you yet, you have to get that done. This is incredibly important. It's the difference between you being successful in 24 or you be doing the same thing and not having a ton of traction. Like maybe you had in 23, or maybe you're actually on the right path in 23, but this is the difference between you now revving up and scaling to the next level. I just think it's very important you guys get that in. And obviously someone like Judy, we just received yours today, and we'll get you on the book for a session. But like, I think about like myself, right? Myself, when I came in here, into the community, I knew that I had no skill set in here, but I knew who did, right? And that was the people that I entrusted to get me to where I needed to be. How do I become another version of Chris? How do I become another version of Zach on the phone, right? How do I sell houses like Nick? So then you have to start looking at what the pillars are of getting better. And then it's just a immense amount of commitment to that thing, right? None of us on this call want to suck on the phone. It's highly uncomfortable, right? How do we go from sucking on the phone to continuing to get better? Well, we know the tools to get better, right? The tools are call critiques, and it's reflecting, listening to your own calls, critiquing yourself. Like Kyle does not send us a call critique without him critiquing himself first. It's just another way of embedding this information deep inside of you. So I want you guys to look at this, this commitment, and really understand what that means. Because Wendy asked a good question, because Wendy's in a place right now where we all get to eventually. Wendy is not alone. I've been there, and then I've been there later on after I've gotten through it with different things, right? Like, how do you know when, to like things are working, when they're not, how to get to the next level? Like, we all experience that, especially in the way, like I always talk about this 9-month period. You go into this business, and in 9 months you've been working your butt off and you're fully immersed. And then that's when you're like you have that imaginary line there where you're like right there, you're ready to do a deal, but mentally you feel farther away than you ever have. Right. But it's this commitment. And that's why listening to Peter talk is so amazing, because this guy did this for decades of not knowing when this was going to be successful. Right. And he was chasing it down. He was wearing all the hats, doing everything, but he stayed committed to himself in this vision that he had without knowing when it was going to happen. That's the most difficult piece. When am I going to be successful? Well, guess what? We don't have that number. We don't know when that's going to be. We know that if we continue to show up, then we're going to continue to put ourselves in a position to get to that goal, right? But it's this belief. It's this 100% belief and commitment to yourself. And no matter how dark it gets, no matter how you start to see the light at the end of the tunnel, the commitment is, if you're a true entrepreneur and you're going to stick with this, that commitment never ends, right? It just continues to grow, and you continue to focus on different things and build your business and scale, and you start focusing on different things. But I just wanted to make sure you guys understand, being an entrepreneur, success is uncomfortable, and it's going to be uncomfortable, and that's okay. That's where this immense amounts of growth lives. All this potential lives in this space, and it's for you to, do the breaststroke through sand to get through it. And you can, and you will. It's just commitment. So again, with the business plans, guys, take it seriously. Get this stuff over here. The fastest way to burnt out is not having a plan and just showing up and doing the reps over and over again. That stuff gets you exhausted and you lose track of what you're trying to accomplish. But if you have a stepped plan of what you have to do on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, you'll know you'll be able to win for the year. But it starts with knowing these little details that takes away so much stress and anxiety away from what's tomorrow going to look like. Well, if you know what tomorrow's going to look like, you can continue to accomplish and step. So that's it, Chris. That's all I wanted to say.
No, thanks for sharing. I'm going to go to Nick. I'm going to give you guys 2 things to do, sort of a self audit. for year end, and then we'll go ahead and do some final thoughts. Nick?
I was just gonna say you were rolling, Steve. That's why, for the reason I wanted to put my hand up. I didn't want to interrupt you or anything like that. So, I wanted to just clarify something. So Kyle said that he was getting 27,000. Just to kind of, he's selling himself short. Totaling the $1,000 binder that we got, he's collecting $34,000.
At closing?
Yeah. Well,
Oh,
no,
wow.
he's collecting 33, but we already have the $1,000 binder.
That's what I meant.
Yeah.
So is that because he got first month built in? That's a good thing to bring up.
It's not that type of a deal. It's
Okay.
Yeah, no, it's a little bit different. It's owner financing. He committed to it.
I remember that. So bottom line is 34 is 34. That's not
34,000 is a lot better than 27. So I just wanted to clarify for everyone.
I think Angie gets a trip or something for that. I don't think he should get the extra money they didn't think he was getting then. Good job, Kyle.
If you wanna, if these shortfalls, if I can give you a routing number and a bank account number, we can just make an arrangement. You can send those to me.
No, Angie's listening. You lose on that deal, Nick.
Congrats,
good
Kyle.
job, and thank you for that, Nick. Good job, Kyle.
And great job, Kyle, for sticking with it. The number one thing is you've stuck with it. And that's the number one thing that anyone can do in this business when you're frustrated.
Chris,
For sure.
I'd like to jump on the business plan thing for just a minute.
Yeah, go ahead.
We've been doing the business plans with the starter associates, and I'll tell you, it, like Chris said, it provides clarity, and the light has come on for a lot of these people. And it's just like overnight, all of a sudden they're making a ton of dials, they're getting a ton of activity. You can't overstate the importance of the business plan.
It's well, Rick, it's like how do you know to ramp up? How do you know to get excited when you don't know what that looks like, right? That it's the clarity that comes with writing down what you have to do every single day, by which quarter you're focused on what, personal growth stuff, business stuff, family stuff. Like it's all involved in this biz plan. Like it's so freaking important. And that's exactly what it does. What it does is it turns the lights on and starts to make you understand, okay, I'm not just shooting in the dark anymore. And that's a huge freaking piece to this. Good point.
Yeah. And why are the starters doing that, guys, by the way? And why did when I first started, would go 3 or 4 hours? Because it's predictable if you do it and send your call in and then find out where your gaps are. So let me do a quick 2 or 3 things here for a self-audit. If you could please jot these down. This is great for this week or next. I'm calling it a self-audit. It's just, again, a gut check. So we talked about the plans. We talked about the grit. We talked about all that. Just do a little bit of a self-audit. Wherever you guys all are right now, it's okay. But let's figure out where that is and be honest about it. So that's what I mean by self-audit. So number one, let's kind of self-audit our schedule to make sure it's in sync with the plan. And let me give you a facetious example. Hey, Chris and Steve, I want to do, 2 deals a month. I got, 3 hours on Saturday morning to work. I'm being facetious, but I just want to make sure your schedules are synced up with your goals so you're not beating yourself up. Super important self-audit. Secondly, your ACCA. I want you to rethink how many times you're doing call critiques. And if you're not sending in 1 or 2, getting the critique, sending in 1 or 2, getting the critique, and doing that constantly, that's not in sync. So again, self-audit. Are you doing that? This is basics, guys. This is the only stuff we did when we first started this whole thing. Okay, so that's number 1. Number 2, I just wrote down, I'm reading my iPad. I wrote down you own your success. And I wrote down for me, I wrote down 08. I could have blamed that on someone. I wrote down for me and Nick in 19, which bled into a little bit into 20. We had a slew of bad buyers. We learned some big things then, but we didn't blame on someone else and get out of the business. We said, shit, what did we screw up? Let's find those, let's fix them, and let's go get after it again. That's what we're doing. So we own our own success. You own your own success. So that's number 2. Number 3, this kind of ties it all together. The word I use is stop gaps, but there are, like we experienced in 19, like I experienced, there are stop gaps, there are challenges somewhere in your biz. You'll know that when you send in the call critiques. You'll know that if, for example, you went on, I'm again giving a facetious one, but if you went on 20 appointments and you didn't get taken, there's a challenge, there's a stopgap there. We need to analyze that, right? If you have three homes and they didn't sell, we need to analyze that. Like, we need to stop and analyze that. That's what I mean by there's stopgaps there. And don't bum out with them. Like, we didn't bum out when we had that year. We obsessed on what we can do good with that. All right, let's rip this apart and see what we can do good. We didn't blame anyone. We said, what can we do to fix that stopgap? So there's a process here. Peter kind of alluded to that, again, without knowing what was on my agenda. I haven't said that word stack it in a while, but you're stacking these basics, and they're all basic. But if you miss one or two, you're missing the boat. You're going to drag your process out further. So those are three or so things for sort of self-audit for year end. Because I go so slow, did anyone miss anything there? Any questions on that stuff? Anything at all? And then we'll move to final thoughts. But I just want to make sure you guys got at least the gist there of these self audits, rethinking a little bit about the creation and reaction, just rethinking all this.
Got it.
Second one again, Chris.
Second one with the audit.
Ownership.
You own your success and failure. Yeah. So remember, wherever you are right now, it's totally okay. Just know where it is. And then if you have that next piece, those stop gaps along the way, there's a gap in every one of our businesses every year. It's what are we working on? I think Steve alluded to it earlier. So what are we working on right now? Which piece of it? Zach and I had an hour and, I don't know, 20-minute meeting this morning after core to rip apart what we're going to do for 24. It's not, to Steve's point earlier, it's a different year. It's a different market. It's different everything. Can't operate the same way. Find the stop gaps, rip them apart, obsess over how you can fix them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any other kind of clarity points you need or questions on that? If not, we can move to final thoughts, because when I do, I'd love to hear, if you're a first timer here, what your aha was. Just realize that no one calls the same. This is more of a year-end theme, but no one of these is the same. Everybody's crystal clear? No questions?
Clear as mud.
We've fired a lot in an hour and 20 minutes, hour and 40 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Did everybody enjoy, before you go to final thoughts, having Peter on? What was your take? Yeah.
It's crazy.
The reason I asked him about needles and whatnot for 24, which he didn't answer, well, you get to know Peter, he doesn't necessarily answer your question. He goes in a certain direction, you get amazing points. But Kim and I were brainstorming this morning. She said, ask him that, because that'll get everybody thinking big. And I don't know as though he answered, but he got us thinking big. That's Peter.
Just me.
What was that?
I said I thought it was just me.
No. Zach cracks up, because you'll get nuggets. You just don't know what the nuggets are going to be.
Sorry, Sean, you're not special.
Couple of focus. All right, let's do this. I'm going to call you guys. If you're new to this, final thoughts, and nothing more than kind of how you feeling. Could be a word, could be a sentence or two, right? Or it could be an aha, it could be an action item you're going to take. Anything, just final thoughts. Nick, because you're top of my screen, final thoughts?
Mute, buddy. You're on mute.
I know, Steve. I was doing it. I think Peter dropped. I don't think he realizes it. He goes so fast. He drops so many nuggets to get everyone, and it's a perfect year-end thing to get everyone thinking bigger.
Yeah.
Definitely, it's great to have that outside perspective, and I hope every one of you knows that it's not just, okay, let's queue up someone from the team to talk and get everyone motivated to continue to go to the next level. We on purpose will bring in outside people like Peter to provide that outside perspective. So I just really loved what he had to say. Everything he said, he got me thinking bigger.
Yeah, and if you guys have contacts of ours that you need to meet, like Ryan, you should remind me I should get Peter on your podcast. That's an example. Like if you have something in 24 you want to do or meet, just tell us. Dan, final thoughts.
I'll tell you, so many things, so many nuggets. I just kept writing and writing. I think, once again, the accountability and discipline are a must. Don't focus on the minutia. I also like his idea as far as when you're trying to build additional resources, not looking for the number one person on a team, find number 4, somebody that's nice and hungry. I thought that had a lot of merit going with it. And of course, this is something my dad promoted for years. The harder you work, the luckier you get. And it's just a matter of putting in the time and the energy. So good, great
I
stuff.
say that about you guys lead flow all the time, don't I? If you're on the phones, you're gonna have some cool opportunities. Okay, John, Bristol, final thoughts. And I know you guys got a bunch of nuggets, but final thought.
I noticed clarity and patience as a common theme throughout this whole thing.
Yeah.
And I need both of those.
Yeah, cool. Don't we all? Tony. Wait, I don't know who came on late, but Tony has no power in his entire town. Instead of bagging the meeting, he went to the airport with his family where they have internet and food. Is that awesome or what? Go ahead, Tony.
Systems, processes, and people. That was a big one for me.
Yeah, nice reset for the year. Maverick.
Yeah.
Drag people, pull people behind in your draft to success. And that holds so true, especially with our community and the coaching.
Yep, sweet. Deneen.
You're on mute, Deneen.
Okay, now, sorry, can't read that. So I think my biggest takeaway that I wanted to mention was the purpose of the business plan that Steve mentioned. The most important thing is not what you did in the last 6 months, because it's not going to work in the same way in 2024. And I'm so tired of people saying, well, the interest rates, blah, blah, blah. You know, 2024 is not going to be the same. And so how am I going to be ready to be grabbing all of the business I can in 2024, because it's not going to be the same as 2023. So thanks for providing Peter too. I mean, it was just so many nuggets. I got 4 pages of nuggets. So
nice. On that note, Deneen and everyone else, remember I used to always say, if you're new at a seminar, when you have a person like Peter and you take notes, go rewrite all the notes. It helps you embed them. Go rewrite all of your notes and revisit. All right, awesome. Sandra.
I think stay in your lane, and the harder you work, the more opportunities that present themselves.
Sweet. Judy.
For me, systems and processes need to be in place, and once your ducks are in a row, step on the gas.
Just don't hit the ducks. Avi.
Don't have to see the whole picture. Work diligently with what's in front of you, and that leads into the 2024 business plan. To have to know what to work diligently on.
Awesome. Kenny.
Eliminate wasteful spending and then turn that into cash flow to deploy it somewhere else. So good stuff.
Yeah, awesome to hear him talk about that. Mr. Mike, if you can. I don't know if you're with your son. You are good. Oh, you muted, Mike.
Yeah, sorry, juggling with my son and all.
I thought
but
so.
yeah, the point that Peter, I mean, don't just always be ready, right? Be in the game. I always stress that with my students, is that if you're not talking to sellers and you're not playing in the game, those opportunities aren't going to come by. So be prepared, be ready. That way you can take advantage of an opportunity that comes your way. So love Peter's words.
Awesome. Enjoy the little guy today. Sean.
Thank you.
Man, that was absolutely awesome. Got so many things. I love all the just phrases that he used, all hat, no cattle. Pulling deep on the oars and having other people do that. When I asked about mindset and visualize, he said systems, process, and people, and it was just like, man, there we go, and squeeze the juice. Make sure we squeeze the juice here get everything that we can from you guys, from the systems you've created. So, man, I loved it. It was awesome.
We got to get a book of Peterisms. Matthew.
Yeah, so he didn't say it exactly those words, but who, not what, is what comes to mind. So finding people to take those lanes, and then once again, didn't say it exactly like that, but poaching your competitors' talent, who are number 4 or 5 down there, which I think is kind of what I kind of took away, is where to find people. So I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, and you guys, I'm gonna say what I've said to Mike Mack a lot over the years, and that is when he talks about people, hopefully your brain didn't go to, oh, I got an expense. I don't know if I can do that. I don't know if I'm ready for that. Hopefully it didn't do that, because with the right people, and this is part of our discussion this morning for an hour and a half, with the right people, you will pull your company up. You will pull your revenue up with the right people, 100%, and at the right time. Kyle, money bags.
It was on the cash, having the dry powder, and then when he even talked about having that revolving credit, so you're quickly to deploy, and because it was so quick to deploy, he was able to leverage himself even further.
Yep, and this is what I've been screaming out since 2016, guys. Make sure when you're in good shape, especially, you set up with either a 7 figures or a fund and grow or someone to start building business credit and have that stuff on the sidelines. Corolla, final thought.
All right. Lots of nuggets always when I listen to him. Don't wait for the opportunity to come to you, but go out there and be present and get your opportunity yourself.
Yep. Nice. Adam.
I wrote down, keep your powder dry, not just having cash in hand.
Couple people love that one. Good deal. Jessica.
I missed most of Peter, but I wrote down what you said. Don't get bummed out. Find what you can do to make it better and just become obsessed with that to keep moving forward.
Yeah, for sure. You and Larry, a couple people had to come on late. Cool. But go back and grab the recording as soon as you can. And Steve will alert Shane and Kelsey to get it out there for all of us. Yeah. Larry, final thought. What you got?
I'm just impressed over and over of how much effort you put in to helping people develop the mindset. And also in, say, hearing someone like Peter, you hear him one time and you take away certain things, come back a couple months later, hear about the same thing, but you come away with a different impression and more useful nuggets.
Right, because we're in a different spot. Very good observation. We're in a different spot when we receive it. So someone says to us sometimes, are you guys going to go over the same stuff at the event? Why? Did you fix it all already? Like, you mastered it all already? You need to hear it again until you mastered it. Ryan, first time with us. Final thought.
Yeah, I would say maybe just one word is inspired. I've been through a couple different mastermind groups, and I'm sure everybody here realizes how important it is or how big of a resource it is, but you guys really being in the trenches and having, I'm thinking about you, Nick, Chris, and then it's not obviously you're Chris, but Steve, just like the power behind the voice and how involved you guys are and how much you really care. I think there's a lot of times where you can just go to a course and they give you the paperwork and you're done, right? Go study it, go implement, but you guys are here as a sounding board for every person. And for me, it's been one call, right? But it's completely different. And for someone to come in and have Peter buy into you guys and have, ownership stake in the company, like that's a big deal. He put his stamp of approval. He gave you a peek behind the curtain, but to know you guys are kind of in partnership as well. And I just think it's a nice stamp of approval to realize like you guys have something really big going on here. And I wouldn't underestimate the power of resources and working together, because I think you can go farther together than alone. So.
Awesome. Kyle, can you give these guys the name of your podcast? Kyle's been at this for years, like we have, and you guys should write this down and subscribe. What's the name of your podcast for these guys to go find it?
Me?
Yeah.
You said Kyle, you mean Ryan.
You're
Sorry.
good. Oh, good. It's called the Weekly Juice Podcast, and I can send a link out to everyone in the chat too. But
yeah,
thanks
you have
so
my
much.
permission. Send it. Oh, chat's fine. You can also send it in the High Six channel. You're good.
Cool. Yeah, thanks so much.
Him and his partner Corey do a dual interview. They're great guests. Let's see, the Lawrence team. You're up.
So a couple things I took away from Peter was his lead by example mentality. And the other quote that I found very good nugget was opportunity doesn't come knocking, get out there and find it.
Love
I
it.
definitely have problems with waiting on a lot of things.
All right. I'm glad you guys immersed yourself today. Steve, I think it's up. You're up, and we'll wrap it up with you and send everybody off to have an awesome weekend holiday.
Yeah, I'll try to be as less long-winded as I usually am, but that's probably not going to happen. No, well, life is
I can
wild.
just mute you, remember. So, you know.
Our journey that we live as individuals is wild. In 2005, after I graduated high school, 3 days later, I went to work as a woodworker for my family and knew nothing about woodworking. And 16 years later, I'm an expert in woodworking, right? But I didn't know what the journey was going to be like. When I joined this community, I've never done anything in real estate in my life. I knew nothing. 5 years later, I own stakes in Chris and Zach and Nick's business. I had no idea that was an opportunity. Had no idea that coaching this would ever be an opportunity. That happened. I didn't know that I would want to speak on a stage, and that's something I'm working on now. If you just focus and you surrender to not having to know what's going to happen in the future, how long it's going to take, it's unbelievable the places it brings you that you didn't even know existed. So I'm going to continue showing up, and I'm really excited to find out what I don't know about now that's going to happen in the future.
Yeah. Open book. Well, you hit it and Peter hit it. I'll wrap up on this. And that is what Tony Robbins calls the tyranny of how, right? People get caught up in the how, so they stop. Instead of just Peter went in, rolled the sleeves up when someone said, "What did you do?" How you said, "I just did this," and then it's next up. Pretty much what you did, Steve, right along the journey. So awesome day, you guys. Awesome 2 hours, I should say. Have an awesome rest of your day. We'll see you Thursday. For those of you that might be traveling for family or taking off, have an awesome holiday.
Thanks, y'all.
Appreciate you guys. Be good.
Bye, everybody.
Yeah.
Bye.